All right, now let's get some analysis. We're now joined via Teams by Michael Atkins, independent elections analyst. Thank you so much for your time, Michael. So let's then talk about the party finalists that's on the IEC. I mean, your thoughts on just some of the changes that you've been able to pick up.
Well, obviously everybody is focusing on Mr. Zuma, but there's one other notable change on the national list and the regional lists. One of the parties that was excluded, Africa Restoration Alliance, has been restored. They lodged an administrative objection with the IEC, and this was dealt with without having to go to the electoral court.
Of course, this is, the IEC's final list, but just talk to us about, are we likely to see some developments and movements post the 29th of May elections, given the fact that there's so many moving parts, as well as some, cases that are before the courts as we speak?
I don't see that there's much scope for sort of alteration of the lists. Obviously, the question of Mr. Zuma's status in the National Assembly will come into play. And parties always submit names on both the regional lists and on their national lists and the provincial legislature lists. So they have some discretion as to which people go to which legislature via a particular list or a different list.
Mm. And of course, it is the 29th of May 2024 elections. It's a crucial one, likened to that of 1994 in terms of just the anticipation, the various changes that we are currently seeing just on the electoral system. Just talk to us then about the importance of independence during this election.
Well, clearly it is something new. And it's disappointing in a sense that there are not more independent candidates contesting these elections. We have in 3 regions, there are candidates for the National Assembly, and then there are a handful of maybe 5 independent candidates in the provincial legislature elections. However, it does seem that there is a possibility that some of those individuals could well be elected, and we will see the impact they make because they're not constrained by the party dynamics.
Mm. And that's important, as you rightfully say, the impact that they make, because not only are we looking onto the independents to make an impact, but also the smaller parties that have one, person that is in the National Assembly. How important is it, especially as we know that given, post this election, that there's not going to be a clear winner per se, and we will be seeing a lot of alliances between parties and, of course, a coalition era. How important then is it for these independents and also those smaller parties to make this impact, within the National Assembly? And how would they go about doing that? I think that's key.
Look, the smaller parties are important. Some people speak negatively about them because of some of the experiences in municipalities. I see smaller parties as a reflection of the diversity of our society and just part of the democratic process. What will count is not so much, is it a small party or not, but rather how the particular parties and leaders will respond in the post-election situation. We could have several different combinations or scenarios happening in terms of coalition negotiations. Mm. And we will have to see whether those parties negotiate in good faith in that post-election scenario.
Now, Michael, of course, you've touched on it, and that is the MK party, particularly former President Jacob Zuma. So we, of course, know that the electoral court upheld the appeal by the MK party in its bid to keep former President Jacob Zuma on, its parliamentary candidate list. I want to talk about the significance of having the MK party now enter the fray, and how this will change the political landscape, as we've been hearing, in as far as their involvement is, going forward.
Obviously, we're in new territory, and in terms of we're all speculating. However, we do know that Mr. Zuma has a very strong constituency, even within the ranks of current ANC supporters, and he may well attract support from outside the ANC for people who are unhappy with the performance of the government. He may be a rallying point. So we also need to look at the internal dynamics of the ANC, let's say over the last two elective conferences, to get an idea of what might happen among voters in respect of
Michael,
the MK party.
Michael, we don't have a clear line, but let me just squeeze in this final question. The IEC, of course, has been dealing with a number of court cases against it. Just talk to us about, just some of the questions in the cloud around the IEC. We know, of course, coming off the back of this MK party win yesterday, the MK party has indicated that it will be seeking some form of recourse, particularly as it relates to Commissioner Janet Love of the IEC, given that bias submission that was made in court. Of course, this does prove, of course, the democratic country that we are in terms of, some challenges being brought forward in court. But what do we make of just the integrity of the IEC going into this election, especially?
We will have to see how the court rules. But what we have before us, I see no indication of bias or improper behavior on the part of the IEC. From what we see, they applied the law as they understood it, and there is no clear indication of any improper behavior at this stage. We must see what happens with that judgment and whether the court makes any finding in particular in respect of the claim of bias.
All right, Michael, thank you so much for your time right here on the program. Michael Atkins is an independent elections analyst, of course, just commenting there on the final candidate list for the 2024 national and provincial elections list. Of course, you can find that list on the IEC's website as well.